Hi there. How have you been since last episode, Taylor?
Good. How have things been with you?
Yes, pretty good. The weather's getting warmer minorly. I mean, we're above zero now, so that's an
Oh, good for
improvement.
you.
Yeah. For that reason, we're going outside without the air hurting our face.
Good. Just hurting our lungs and all the
Yeah.
other internal organs.
My friends and I have often wondered throughout our lives, why do we live in a place that hurts our face?
Because I've been there and my face has been hurt.
Obviously, there has to be some other redeeming characteristic about Toronto.
No, there are many. I love this city.
Is the weather cooling down for you yet?
It's a little cooler. It's
Mm,
still too hot.
like
It's
28.
been it's been a hot it's been a hot summer.
All right, so we are up to episode 5 now, and we're going to be focusing on someone from your area of the world.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is Aniko.
Someone I know personally.
Oh, do you? What's your history with Annie?
She works at a company that I worked for some time for two publishing projects, and we got to work together. And she's great. What can I say about her?
Well, you can tell me 3 things that come to mind when you hear the name Annie. Go. One.
Well, I think of her, I think of future, and I
Mm,
said this before. I said this on stages, and I keep repeating that. I think that girl is like the future of this industry because she's just so good at so many different things. Like she's a good author, and she's also a good speaker, and she's also very good at training teachers, and just so many things, so many talents, and she's quite young.
true. I
So
mean,
that's impressive.
recently I saw, well, I follow her on Instagram, of course. That's how I got to know her to begin with. I saw her posting about speaking at some event, but there were so many comments of people saying how she was like a queen and how she was like someone who inspired them and someone who wanted them to be better teachers and all these sort of positive characteristics that, like you say, for being relatively young is making an impact already. And that
Yeah,
sounds amazing. She's that
she's
girl.
that girl. Yeah.
I can fully imagine that. And I remember in the interview when I was interviewing her, I hadn't ever spoken to her before, and I was really impressed with how proud and confident she spoke about herself and her life experiences. Not something every young person is able to do that well.
Yeah.
And I think she said a lot of raw and intentional things that I think even at the end of the interview, she mentioned how proud she was of how the conversation had gone and how she had said everything in a way that, and we had both said everything in a way that she was excited about and to see where it was going to go. The only thing she was wrong about was how long it was going to take for this podcast to come out. Because she was sort of talking like, oh, it'll be a little while. So like, it's going to be quite a while because later
And
on.
here we are.
So first of all, hi. Can you introduce yourself sort of briefly?
Yes, I'm Aniko. Most of my peers call me Ani. I am an English teacher. I have been teaching for over a decade. I identify as a travesti, which is a specific term in Brazilian culture for trans feminine people. Identifying as a travesti happened throughout my studies. So I was already teaching by the time I was starting to understand that some of my past struggles were actually gender dysphoria and something called transsexuality. And so teaching was the one thing that saved me. Education as a whole saved my life, and
Ah,
I'm pretty happy with that. I am currently based in the city of São Paulo,
hmm.
but I am originally from Salvador, Bahia, which is also in Brazil, in the northeast region.
And what brought you to Sao Paulo?
Actually, the opportunity to work in education going beyond just being a teacher. So I was invited to be a materials writer
Oh,
and
nice.
teacher trainer here. Yeah. Back then, I was kind of worried because I wanted to fully transition, but I was living in a city called Recife. My region where I was born is quite transphobic and homophobic as a whole, so it was kind of difficult to be living there and not living to the fullest extent of everything. So I was either going to immigrate and seek asylum somewhere to see if I could transition, and I knew that was going to be so hard, and it probably would have backfired terribly, but I knew I needed to do something. And then when I got the job and I was called for it, I was like, yes, 100% count on me. I'll be there the day and time you want me to be there. And I don't plan on leaving soon.
Okay. So Sao Paulo then is more open-minded. Is that what I'm getting from this?
I think so in a sense because I think I kind of equate São Paulo to what I imagine New York City to be like. Many people from so many different cultures that it's not that we're not gonna have hate crimes or that we're not gonna have homophobia, transphobia, whatever. I
Mm.
just think that because there are so many people here from all walks of life, and you're walking down the street and you're going to see a goth girl all dressing like uh white and black, really corpse paint. At the same time, you're going to see someone dressing very casually and a very formal person, and everyone, white, black, Indian,
Mm.
indigenous as well, like everyone is there. And because there are so many people, people don't stop and look at you
Right.
directly, and they don't stare. And so I think people got used to the 12 million people that live in the city, and you can't have 12 million people who look and behave the same way.
Right. You talk a lot about sort of a metropolitan city, right? A larger city has the characteristic of people caring less about each other, which can be a good or bad, but
Yeah.
in our case, maybe good in a lot of ways. The thing that you said struck a chord with me really was people sort of have just gotten used to the amount of other people that are there, right? So nobody's spending time staring at the odd one or the individual, right? Because everybody's kind of like that. And it
Yeah.
reminds me kind of usualization in a sense, just because, you know, the sort of point to usualization in materials is to make something so common or so frequent that it no longer becomes a spectacle or people just
Yeah.
don't pay any attention to it because it's just so usual, right?
One of the biggest difficulties, because Recife is the capital of the state I was living in. Salvador is the capital of Bahia, but those cities, there is something cultural about the close-knit bond that we have with people. We don't live for work. I think São Paulo, there's this added thing, there's this cultural conundrum, if you will, that you're just like working all the time. You're so tired. You just want to go back home.
Mm.
You don't actually care. In Recife, in Salvador, people gossip about each other. We stop. We put a chair on the street if you live in a relatively safe area, and you look at the house of your neighbor and you gossip about them and you
Oh,
tell
really?
stories about people.
Uh,
And everybody's so close. Like I remember living there. This doesn't happen in São Paulo, but there I would bake a cake and I would call my friend and I would say, "Hey, I just baked the cake. Let's get high together. Let's watch a film together. Let's do something." So we're so close that people feel like they can intrude on each other's life. The culture, there's a big macho culture, this
yeah.
thing. We have it's called cangaceiro culture in Pernambuco, which were like real life bandits, like the Brazilian Robin Hood, but they were also extremely sexist,
Hmm.
and homophobic to a certain extent. Women had their place, women were bandits as well, so
Mm.
it wasn't all so sexist like we expect some places to be and stuff. But this idea of the manly man was created in those places.
I wouldn't say that in isolation. Like I think toxic masculinity, which seems to me a sort of synonym for this, is present in most cultures. But I
Yeah.
wondered if you could talk about what your experience of it was.
I think it's even difficult to answer that question because I think it's the kind of mindset that dictates everything in your life.
Hmm.
And I think maybe that's something very South American in a way, but it is this very conservative. I think everything related to men is superior, and men should be ruling things, and in politics and entertainment, and women are like second class citizens, and everyone who's in between would be third or fourth class citizen,
Hmm.
which is a shame.
Do you have that feeling in everyday life that this is still a prevalent attitude, or is it just sort of in the background, or you grew up with it and you don't notice it as much now?
I think nowadays we notice this quite clearly because we've been talking about it so much.
Hmm.
The first example that I got to remember was in terms of politics, when you go to like the Congress or the Senate, where most congressmen are male.
Hmm. Congressman. That
Exactly.
that right there, right?
Yeah. But I know this is not just in Brazil. I remember this very interesting, I don't know if I can call it like an experiment or something, in which they had lots of pictures taken from houses of parliament and from all over the world, and they would sometimes erase the men in the pictures and just keep the women, and you would see like very few women. So I think at the end of the day, especially when we talk about politics everywhere, or in most places, it's a lot of like few women in male dominated fields.
Mhm. Mhm. I remember when Trudeau was elected for the first time. At that time, this was 2015, he was the first prime minister to have 50-50 representation between men and women in his cabinet. It was made such a big deal of at the time,
I
and
remember.
for all his faults in terms of his photo ops and his way of like sound biting things and so on, those are all true. He still did that, like so you have to give him some props for this. But it was 2015, and even he used that year as a like, what the fuck, everybody? Like, why is this such a big deal? Time. So it just goes to show how patriarchal, you know,
Yeah.
everything is so deeply rooted in, you know.
Yeah.
And what's the cause of all problems in the world? Got to come up in the podcast eventually. uh, righto.
With the advent of Christianity in the cities as well, it just became the thing where you don't talk about transgender people are out at night. If you're gay or bisexual, it is expected that you keep yourself on the closet, or
Mm.
maybe just don't make it a big deal. Don't be a freak of nature and stuff like that. There are geographical locations where it's safer to be yourself, but you're not gonna see gay couples or lesbian couples holding hands and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's
Is
that,
it like a sort of don't ask, don't tell kind of thing? Like people are
Yeah,
aware that where we exist, but as long as we're not visible, so to speak,
yeah.
behind
And
closed doors, you can do whatever you want, kind of thing.
exactly that.
Hmm. Well, in the 90s, I wouldn't have minded that perspective a little bit, right? But now, absolutely not.
What I feel is that in the last 15 years, there has been a shift of the younger generation. I remember when I was leaving school, we started normalizing certain terms. Like here
Totally.
we had bicha or travesti, which
Mm.
were extremely demonized terms, and you wouldn't call someone that. And I remember watching a documentary called Bichas, the documentary, in which someone, one of the, and I know that person, and that's what struck me after a few years. I got to meet that person and everything. They were like, yes, I am. And in English, that would look something like, yes, I'm queer, and I'm going to be queerer every day, and I'm going to be a level queerer as much as I can, just like a Pokemon. And that really struck a chord because we had never heard someone say, I am queer, I'm bisha, with so much pride in their voice. And
Mm.
that was, I think, 2014, 2015.
Wow,
So
recent. Bisha. How do you spell that? Because I couldn't look it up, obviously, because it didn't wasn't a word in the transcript.
It is a word. It is Bica. Oh my God. Bicha.
Okay, got it. Remember a couple of episodes, I asked you, are there slurs in Brazilian Portuguese? And you were like, oh, yeah, I'm sure there are, but I can't think of any.
There's
Is that
one.
one of them?
That can be one of them. It's definitely been reclaimed by the LGBT community, but it can definitely still be used as a slur.
I see. Okay, so Google AI, which is unreliable, says bicha is a Spanish and Portuguese term with varied context-dependent meanings ranging from affectionate to highly derogatory. In Spanish, it often means a girl or a young woman, or a snake or a creature, while in Argentina, it can imply evil. In Portuguese, it is often a reclaimed term for gay men, formerly pejorative.
Surprisingly accurate. When used like as a term of endearment, I think it's less abrasive.
Would you use it?
No, I don't
No?
use that word.
Hmm.
I think it's something that gay men feel more comfortable referring to
Hmm.
themselves as and addressing other gay men. I think
I
it's one
see.
of those things that
Gotcha.
for me to say it as a woman, it could be read as slightly homophobic.
So I might say it, for example,
Exactly.
and I shall do so with the first opportunity I have. Because I know a lot of
Can't
Brazilian
wait.
gay men.
and that's when we started taking back those terms and saying, I am a travesti, I am a bicha, I am queer, I am that. And if you want to call me that, okay, go ahead, do it. I'll own it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And it's like, if as soon as you own it, the power is gone from the person trying to use it against me, right? And they're just
yes,
like, they don't want to use it anymore because
yeah,
what's the point, right? And it was,
absolutely.
yeah, totally like that when I was a kid too. Like, to be honest, the way people insulted me or gay men was to call me girl. And I didn't like that at all. And I think it was just such an insecurity in myself that I wasn't comfortable with my feminine side as so much. I mean, it was obvious that it was there, but I wasn't comfortable with it. And so it felt like an insult all the time. Even when other gays called each other girl, it was just really uncomfortable for me for such a long time. But over time, I've really worked on that insecurity, right? And listening to a lot of other people and just going like, why do I feel these bad ways? I mean, there's nothing inherently negative about the word girl or queer or transgender or whatever it is.
I think for me, particularly speaking, what happened was I come from a neo-Pentecostal, very evangelical Christian,
Mm,
like fervorous Christians, and the idea of homosexuality wasn't at all present in my life.
mm,
It really was a taboo where you wouldn't hear people talk about it. And if they would talk about it, it would be hushed so the children wouldn't hear that. Because the
mm,
biggest fear that the pastors, the preachers, the everyone from the church to my parents to my grandparents, it was you can watch SpongeBob SquarePants. And I was like, why? Because it's wrong, and I never understood, and it took me years to understand that the problem was SpongeBob is likely a gay character.
How about a ride back to the old Krusty Krab, cowboy? Squidward, that was so masculine. My savior. But you were magnificent, Squidward. So strong and courageous.
And so I didn't even know what the problem was because I didn't have the vocabulary
Right.
to express that.
Yeah.
I would hear things such as the disease, the sin of homosexualism is, and it would sound very bad. So I wouldn't want to be associated with that.
Yeah.
Until I met someone who was bisexual, and they were, not only were they a normal person, they looked hot as hell. And I was like, damn.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I want to be that. Maybe I can accept that I am that. It was a journey to understand that it's okay. You can be bisexual. You can be whatever. And at the beginning, I thought I was just bisexual or gay or something until coming to terms that there was something else. And it still took me 10 years to find the term transgender. And I think what happened was a lack of vocabulary.
I can totally relate to the lack of vocabulary, but I mean, there wasn't, right? I mean, especially when you're not exposed to vocabulary from within the community because you have no community near you, you're not going to know. And so if you think back to like ancient civilizations who had a lack of science understanding, right? They would explain things in a way that made sense to them because that's all they could understand. So I kind of related to that a little bit, you know? Because exactly what you're saying, gay wasn't a term I knew when I was a kid. So I just thought I wanted to be a girl. Yeah. I'm not transgender in the end, but I thought I was girlish and I wanted to be a girl. And it was a lot because I physically didn't really want to be a girl actually, but it was because I was interested in boys. I liked girlish things, but I also just wanted to be boys, you know, relationship-y kind of thing, even when I was very young.
I think one of the things that I have started to realize nowadays is this question: did I want to be the boy I look up to, or did I want to have that? And that was always very difficult because I knew I didn't fit in that mold, and I knew I wouldn't look like that. I wanted to be with that guy. I didn't want to be him. It's funny because when talking about marriage, nowadays I don't even like the idea of marriage, but I would always imagine myself, and I wouldn't ever be in the position of a groom wearing manly clothes. It was always like I wanted to decide the dress of the bride and stuff. And like, why do I care so much about that? What's happening? What's wrong? And that's the thing. I kept thinking something was wrong. I was broken. I was deficient to a certain level because why don't I fit in? Why? You know, there's a story about vocabulary. It's talking about I was at school and I was out. People knew I liked boys, and I was kind of discovering RuPaul's Drag Race and discovering drag in general. That was 2010. And one of the boys, very maliciously, very insidiously, came and asked me whether I rubbed one out or if I jerked off. In Portuguese, we have very specific terms for male and female masturbation, and I didn't understand the difference. And they would always be trying to be mean, and I didn't understand that because I didn't see maliciousness there. I was also
Didn't
very
you though? You didn't see malicious?
No. I'm gonna tell you why. I was advanced at school, so everyone in my classroom was like 2 years older than I was. I was starting to use social network, and in certain social networks, gay people were nice, and gay people were very cool with each other, and my friends were always accepting And then I moved cities and I thought everyone was just as accepting. So when we were talking about anything connected to sex or sexuality, it was always very nice. And so I thought those people were, when they noticed that I didn't notice they were trying to bully me, and I was okay, and I was still being a big old fag, and I was going to be very girly, and I started wearing makeup and dresses at school. People were like, okay, we can't do much about it. And so they started to embrace me and my queerness to the
Wow.
point where everyone was like, oh, so we have this activity. Do you want to get in drag and help us win the contest? I was like, yes, 100%. And the boys would like teach us how to wear heels. What do we need to do? What kind of makeup do we wear? Like,
Wow. That's so cool, actually. You know, like that, it's almost like a dream, man. Like the thing that's sort of relative to that, when I was in school, I had male friends. I mean, certainly more female, but some male friends, some boys, and they were always different around me than they were with other boys. And, you know, they didn't mind doing slightly girlier things, if you want to call it that, or more feminine things. And they were more like honest and sort of emotional, I guess. And I think that was the thing I rubbed off on them, you know, like that was the vibe I gave them, that it was safe to do so. And then whenever we went to school and we were around the other boys, they changed and they weren't like that anymore. And I remember just being so confused because I couldn't understand why they were like this with me and why they were like this with me and other boys in a different way. And it made me so upset, you know. And girls were not like that. Girls were a little bit more consistent. I had straight male friends who, when we were alone at my house, would often do things that, and I don't mean sexy things. If only, no, would do things that were more feminine perceived. They just got the vibe around me that it was okay to be like that. And it was okay to like, all I can think of right off the top of my head is like pretending we were cats or dogs. That would be something I would do with a lot of my female friends, but I would never do it with male friends, at least not really, because male friends, you were supposed to play sports or you were supposed to play tag or get outside and get kind of dirty. And female friends were more into things that were cleaner and like a little cute. We're more like that. And yet, when my straight male friends were alone with me, they would be more open to doing that kind of game because actually they really wanted to do it. But when they were around a group of other boys, that just isn't what boys were expected to do or act like. So they had to keep up a sort of macho facade. And
Oh,
with me, they didn't
interesting.
really have to do that. Or they would talk about their feelings, which is much more of a feminine characteristic, especially at that age. They would talk about what they're scared of, or they would talk about girls they liked, but not in a like, I want to fuck them kind of way, just more of a like emotional way, or how they were hurt by a girl or something like this. And it was something that was sort of safe to do around me when it wasn't safe to do around other people. The other side of that was when those same people were back at school, they treated me differently. And they were sort of back to being that straight, arrogant asshole. And I remember feeling so betrayed by them. After a while, I got used to it and thinking like, okay, well, this is just how it is. I have to get these, I have to get these boys alone with me at home in order for them to be who they really are. And when we're at school, we have to pretend this whole social dynamic where they don't like me anymore and how stupid that was. And that was sort of one of the realizations where society was like, okay, society's fucked. You have to play this game and pretend.
I think it just speaks volumes on the way boys are raised and how they're expected to behave and how they end up behaving to fulfill those expectations.
It's like in queerness, almost a sadness that I have for people like that. You know, that it sucks that you feel so imprisoned by the way society expects you to behave, that you have to behave in that way, even though that's essentially not who you are. And I think that's kind of like a complete metaphor or a summary of a queer experience in a lot of places. And even though that's true, it's also a summary of straight experiences, cisgender straight experiences too, because those people don't actually act like themselves in real life. And when they're finally can let their guard down, they can be someone who they genuinely are.
And I think it's just one of those things, one of the million things that goes to show how everyone is just so suffocated by those standards and social roles, and how sad that is.
I used to feel bad for straight people because, unlike straight people, I thought queer people were free from conformity and expectation. One of the reasons I liked being queer was that, by definition, I don't have to follow all the rules that society puts out for me. And that is freeing. And that's one of the superhero sort of characteristics of being queer, in my opinion. And I felt sorry for straight people who have to feel like they have to follow all these rules and plans that are pre-laid out for them in their lives, like getting married, having kids, getting a mortgage, all these things in a row that sort of they have to do. And maybe not necessarily wanting to do all of them, but they feel they can't not do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that queer culture also has a set of rules and expectations and guidelines and stuff like that? And I'm on the rose-colored glasses perspective of queerness.
I think both things can be true. And I think when a group of in society thinks that they are so completely out of a system that they can do things in a totally different way, I think that ends up becoming a prison as well. And when I say that, I think of some gay friends of mine who are male and who, for instance, want to have like a family, want to have something that would be deemed more traditional in terms of a relationship with one person and getting married and maybe having kids, and how difficult they say it is. Because especially I think when it's about men, there is a lot of hormones and testosterone or whatever that does make things very sexual.
The school I studied in were many of the children around, well, they weren't around my age, they were like 2 years older than I was. Most of them were from São Paulo, and they were really, I wasn't the only queer kid. There was a lesbian girl who was she was like, I think I was 13, 14. She was like 16. We were in the same grade. She was butch as hell. She was the definition of a butch lesbian. Everybody loved her. And so they kind of, and we were the only out and proud queer teenagers at school. And they were like, and the teachers, we think one of the teachers was a lesbian. We know nowadays for sure one of them was a gay guy. And there were people, because it was Salvador, there was a big Black population as well. And so we were always talking about racism. We were always talking about diversity. And the teachers would be like, I would be, like I said, a big old fag. I would have no problems making sexual jokes, innuendos to the boys. I would make the boys uncomfortable on purpose. And the teachers would love that because they had never seen a student who was so comfortable with queerness. And they were like, you shouldn't, you're not going to bully this person because this person is braver than you all are, because they're wearing their heart on their sleeve. They're out and proud. And what are you doing? And I remember there was this one boy one time that I sent him a message saying I had a crush on him. He he said that he would beat me up. And I created this plan. I was friends with his younger sister. And I talked to her about the situation, and she said, oh, okay, that's fine. Let's go to my house. And then The next time he sees me, I'm in his house talking to his mom,
Mm.
and he's just like, damn, like, what do I do? And then we had a moment, we had a heart to heart, and he became my friend. And I was like, okay, you are not gonna beat me up because I'm friends with your sister. If you
Mm.
do that, your mom will know you're trying to beat me up.
Right.
And
It's like you
so, like,
created allies around you, and
yes,
that what that did was made him be not so much an asshole, right? That was
yeah.
because that's not maybe who he actually was, and maybe he was putting a face on for people. I'm not sure.
It was
Mm.
because the letter we were sending to everyone in the classroom. It was an activity, and so
Mm.
everyone got a letter. And the one he got, people knew it was me because they knew I had a crush on him,
Uh,
and they tried to make fun of him because of that. But then when we stopped and I was at his house and he noticed, oh, you're just a normal person. I shouldn't be ashamed of you liking me. Like, yeah, no, I'm like. Okay, you don't like me back. That's fine.
yeah.
Let's be
Yeah, it's not
friends.
like you're going to pursue him indefinitely because he, like, come on. What kind of, that that myth drives me up the fucking wall,
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to like go for every single man with a dick, like give me a break. Did you have other queer influences that pushed you into the bravery and the strength and stuff like that? Or what do you think?
So at the beginning, like I said, school was the safe space. And in my house, I did not have the courage to stand up to my parents.
Mm,
So I was living a double life.
right.
So when I left home, I was me. When I was in my parents' house, I was something else. My
Mm,
friends knew, my friends understood the situation, and they went along the facade. But I remembered things started to change when I started listening to heavy metal. I love death metal.
okay.
And at the same time, I started listening to Lady Gaga.
Ah.
And that was 2010. In 2010, she releases the Monster Ball live, the HBO special.
Mm,
And during the concerts, she's like, you can be whatever you want to be. Don't worry about it. Be brave. And I started looking at forums and websites, and she was always like, I'll fight for your rights to be who you are. There's no issue with you being gay or lesbian. Then she releases Born This Way. And I'm like, what's happening here? Because I had never seen someone like that. I remember
mm,
one of the biggest hits when it came to the idea, the concept of homosexuality was a Canadian film called Crazy, a coming of age story about this boy living with his parents and his understanding his sexuality. And the soundtrack, there's a lot of David Bowie and some
yeah.
80s, 90s rock as well. And I remember that Gaga had that same style, and the clothes were something else. And then people are saying she was actually a man.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what's happening? Who is this woman? I need to know more about her.
Mm.
And everything that she was releasing, I remember she released Judas during Easter, during Holy Friday, and I was just like, yes, she's heretic. I like her. And so her songs and her talking about equality and equity and the LGBT community was something that made me go, oh wait. So there are people who know people like me.
Mm,
I exist beyond this group of people where I am the different one. I am accepted, but I am different.
yeah.
She's actually saying it's okay, it's good, it's cool to be me.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
I totally understand. I identify. I mean, I'm an old gay by comparison. So like Madonna was my coming out in that sense and my savior in that regard, right? I remember thinking like, wow, there's other people like this out there somewhere in my own little space. No, I'm this alone person, so I thought, but there's this community somewhere out there, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, you know, my best friend from when I was like 6 years old ended up as being a lesbian. Funny.
Something similar happened. My oldest friends from when I was a child, she actually she's a cis woman married to another woman. She's a lesbian. The other one is a bisexual girl, and everyone is somehow another friend is now a trans woman just like me, and
Mm.
it's like, oh look, the
You know,
diversity.
it's almost like when you take off oppression, people then blossom into
Yeah.
whom they really are, right? Like,
Yeah.
what a novel concept.
Yeah. Another thing that's really important to me and the building up of my identity that I just thought about was Drag Race.
Mm.
As stupid as it may sound, I remember watching Jujubee back in season 2,
Hmm.
and it changed my life because I had never seen a more beautiful woman. It was difficult for me to understand the limit and the distance between drag and trans.
Mm.
And it took me a while, but I knew I liked Drag Race and I knew I wanted to be like them.
Oh
I
yeah.
just didn't fully understand how or how much.
Mm.
And I remember Sonique, Kylie Sonique Love saying I'm a trans woman and I can't leave like that. When I get home, I don't want to take this off. And whenever I would get in drag ever since school, that's something I would feel wrong with taking the makeup off, with taking
Mm.
clothes off. And when I was in university, it was like 6 years later, I started learning about non-binary people. And I was like, wait, so gender is a spectrum.
Right.
When did they come up with that? And yes, that mind-blowing.
Mm.
And I remember Courtney Act from
Mm.
season 6.
Mm.
She comes out as a gender fluid person and
Mm.
she's bisexual and she's also a drag queen. And then I started to understand I can be all of those things at once.
I know. Yeah, right.
I'm trans. And that was the moment where I realized, oh, okay, so drag and those are different things and I can be all of that and I can be proud of that. One time, my mom actually caught me watching the season 2 reunited, and she was like, "Oh, so that's why you hide to watch TV? You want to see those men dressed like women?" I was like, "Those are men? No way! I had no idea. I thought they
Mm.
were looking women."
Mm. Right.
Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So it wasn't so easily available. I remember that my brother and we were getting fed up with the homophobia from my parents, and we just started watching in the living room. We wouldn't watch on the TV, but I had bought my computer,
Mm.
and I was like, I'm watching on my computer. And
Mm.
so we would start watching. My brother is gay as well, and he's super cool with everything. He has helped me throughout my transition and stuff. He's lovely.
What's his
And
name?
his name is Rodrigo.
Oh, we'll just do a shout out to him then.
And I remember we were watching like the season 8 finale together. My mom comes into the living room. She's like, "Oh, so that's what you two are watching, that kind of gay faggotry." And he was like, "Shut up. It's almost time of the crowning. Wait a moment. You can fight with us later. Right now, we need to finish this episode." And it was everything like
What a great
that.
ally to have so close to you too, you know?
Yeah.
My mom, she found Barbie dolls that I had kept from my sister, and I was, you know, doing their hair and making them do gymnastics and things like that. And she caught me doing that one day and was like, had a full on cry. And that drama really like traumatized me at the time. And so I just never even entertained the idea of telling my sister or friends or anybody really. I fought against it for a long time.
What happened with my brother is that he actually saw the harm my family was making to the family itself and to me both him and I, we knew we couldn't stand up to our father. And my brother just knew what they were doing was wrong and he didn't like it. And even if at the beginning he didn't understand what being trans was, no matter what I did, he would always support me no matter what. And he was starting to discover his own sexuality and understand that he liked boys. And he was like, he knew he would suffer the same things that I was going through. And so we kind of bonded over that. We bonded together. We still fought a lot. There was still a lot of understanding and
Oh, your
learning.
siblings.
Yes. But at the end of the day, he was a really good ally because he hated to see me crying over the homophobia and transphobia of my parents and their prejudice and stuff. We also fought a lot, and there were moments because he tried to steal my boyfriend or stuff like that.
What a
So can you
bitch.
imagine my younger brother, like such a little bitch, conniving little bitch. But I think we like that actually it wasn't good at the time, but he was also understanding more about himself. And sometimes the only people he knew who were like him was actually my who wasn't a boyfriend or anything, was just a fling. And I think the biggest bitch was actually the guy and not my brother, but whatever.
Another
And-
story for another podcast.
Yes. And when I started transitioning, he was always the one person who would ask questions. He wouldn't assume anything. So he was always very brave in asking questions and asking, is this term correct? And he would see something, he would like, do you agree with this person that this is transphobic? If you don't agree, can you explain me why you don't agree with that? Or if this happens, what do I do? How do I treat people? So he was he wanted to learn.
Do you have feelings on when people can ask you questions about being intersex or trans or anything like that? Or is there any kind of time where you feel that's completely inappropriate for you? Or do you try to avoid it altogether? Or do you like being completely open about it? Or what's your thoughts on that?
I think we shouldn't ask people questions that we can like find answers to on Google.
Yeah, that's a
If that
good
makes
point.
sense.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I think that should be a first for everything.
Not very often anymore does anybody ask me about being gay. But initially, people used to, like my family or friends used to like go, oh, which one's the girl, which one's the boy, like those kind of stupid questions, right? A lot of the questions just came out of ignorance, and I think some people were genuinely interested in the answer. But in other cases, there's always the person who's just curious for no reason. It depends on who you are and why you're asking that question, whether or not it's a bothersome question.
And I think it depends on who you're talking to and how close you are with that person. And that just should be a rule of thumb for everything.
Like, why do people think that anybody who's different from them, but let's just say specifically trans people, are up for investigation? When you think about in society, what kind of questions are regularly expected or allowed in certain situations? It's almost the same thing, right?
You know, Kelly once said, I can teach you, but I have to charge.
I think it depends on a lot of things. I think who the person is and where they're coming from. So if I have a young trans girl whom I just met and she's asking me questions like even questions about surgeries and stuff, I understand that comes from a place of she's trying to understand more about transgender issues as a whole and how my relationship was I'm older, I have been transitioning for longer. Okay, that's fine. when it's like a cisgender person that I have just met or that I know for a while, but we're not very close, we don't have the kind of why are you asking me that? You wouldn't ask someone, oh, are you going to like surgically fix your
Yeah.
nose or something like the hell? Why would you ask me that? So I think it depends. And there are genuine questions that can come from cisgender people who might not know um even if what they are asking is right or wrong. My sister, who is not a blood sister, but she's a black trans woman. And when I was unlearning my racial biases, I needed to understand a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
I started seeing things. And I remember I would always go to her and ask, is that wrong? Is this racist? If I say something like that, look at what this person is saying. That's so racist. To the point where she was like, okay, thank you, but I don't want to talk about that.
Mm.
And so she understood. I wasn't trying to be mean. I wasn't trying to trigger her, like her, and that was not my intention. But maybe do your own research.
Hmm.
Google is there,
Hmm.
and there are things where we can sit down and talk, but not all the time. When are questions genuine questions, and when are they just when you're just like modeling to be an ally and you're in fact
Mm.
just like
Performative, sort of.
yes, it's not that term that there is a specific term that I would like to use, but I can't remember right now. But this idea of performative activism. And so I needed to unlearn a lot on my own. And I think that was good because I actually went and I studied and I read and I
Yeah.
watched Black people who were talking about that. So I wouldn't replicate those racist actions and stuff. So
Yeah. If we put aside the people who are malicious and just ignore that, there's just among humans, there's a tendency to want the fastest, easiest answer to something. That tends to be asking someone rather than finding it out themselves. You know, like it works almost in all situations I've found, because even something as simple as knowing how to do something on the computer rather than trying to figure it out themselves or Google it or whatever, because they know I would know the answer, they come directly to me, and it's so annoying. Obviously the stakes are amplified a million times when it comes to identity compared to that, and so it's always something that I try to tell excuse me, tell people, which is we don't owe you education about us at all. Quite often, in trying to educate, you have to sort of relive a bunch of things that you don't really want to
yes.
talk about. You know, it's something, and they don't get that necessarily, and it tends to be more curiosity than anything else. So, yeah.
I even think something that you said when it magnifies when questions are about identity, and this is my experience. Another trans person might have a completely different experience. So there
100%.
are
Yeah.
certain questions where you're expecting me to educate you, but I can only share what I know based on my life experiences. I'm
Mm.
not going to be able to tell you the correct answer to something
Mm.
because there are trans women in, I think Taylor is one person that doesn't identify as a travesti. It doesn't make sense to call her that because she identifies as with a different term. And so when someone comes and like, oh, what's the difference between trans and travesti? Which is a very common question in Brazil. It's
Mm.
like, darling, you can read an article about that. There are billions of them. You
Mm.
can, it's one click away. And then a better question is, how would you prefer to be called? How do you identify? And then if that person is comfortable enough, they will explain to you why they prefer a term over another.
Yeah, or they won't, and you'll just do
And
it
that's
because that's
fine.
what you want, right? You know, like that's exactly it. Yeah. So Annie, I always want to have some queer joy mentioned, but I wonder if you do have like a short story or anything that you think of when you think of queer joy on a daily basis?
So after I came to São Paulo, like I said, I was expecting my life to improve vastly. I never expected it would improve as much as it did. When I came here, I knew my life would change. I just knew that. But where I used to live, I didn't have any perspective of ever owning a house, of building a family. The idea of family was so like abstract that I actually thought I didn't have a family, and the only family I would ever had were my friends, and that was something else. And I wouldn't ever have a relationship and stuff. And then I came here. Within 8 months, I met who is now my husband, and we own a house now. We've been able to buy an apartment, and my husband challenges me to be a better person every day, to look and to feel like what I really need to feel to propel me forward. And I want exactly what you said. I want to show him what I'm doing. I want to work because he always says he's my biggest fan, and I am happy to show him the thing that I'm doing, and we're building this together. And then I think about all the other trans girls that I might inspire and that I might reach out. I have plans for the future. I want to do CPD. I want to become a better teacher. I want to inspire other people. I want to inspire trans educators. I want to inspire cisgender people to go and talk about transgender issues. If you don't see trans people going to conferences, it's because there isn't enough trans people available to talk about those issues. So you should be going to places and talking about us and making us the center of the problem, which we are at this moment. We are suffering, and we are trying to be alive. We are trying to reach the end of the month with all bills paid. And I finally, for the first time in my life, I have plans for the future. And I imagine there is a future for myself. So I never believed it gets better was real, but it did got better.
Yeah, my name is Chad.
I'm Giovanni.
I'm Elizabeth.
My name is Thiago Mitoso.
My name is Ethan Trin.
Kanako Sula.
Most of my peers call me Annie.
David Monroe.
Gaga.
I am 27 years old.
And I'm 57. Did I say that? 57 years old.
I'm 32 years old.
I'm 48 now.
So I moved to Vancouver probably about 35 years ago. I grew up in Saskatchewan.
I'm half American and half Italian.
I am currently based in the city of São Paulo.
I'm a British woman.
I live in the north of France.
Growing up in my small town in Turkey.
And I'm an English teacher from Brazil. I live in Manaus, Amazonas.
I grew up in Vietnam.
In Chiang Mai, Thailand.
I would say pansexual and bigender.
A cis lesbian, although generally my preferred self-descriptor is queer.
I identify as a travesti.
I came out as bisexual, queer.
Bisexual, pansexual, and aromantic.
Well, queer, more and more.
I'm not particularly fond of the word man. I love the term queer.
Being queer.
Queer as F.
Hi, I'm Taylor Veigga.
And I'm Tyson Seburn, and you're listening to Workbook. Workbook is produced by me, Tyson, and is a community-driven queer ELT podcast and materials project. Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next.
If you're a cisgender person and you consider yourself an ally, are you actually going beyond and making an effort to actually put trans people as the center of the discussion? Are you making sure those people are represented? Because we need people in positions of power to change the structure we're living in.